The wind sliced across his face like blades of glass. Jacques groaned as he stirred, blinking against the snow that crusted over his visor. His helmet had cracked somewhere during the crash, and the heads-up display now flickered with dying light. Static hissing softly in his ears. His left leg was numb. His right arm burned. His lips were blue. He didn't know how long he'd been unconscious. He only knew he should be dead. When he pushed himself up, the snow broke away like ice sheets, shattering. The landscape stretched out in every direction, bleak, white, merciless. Solara V, the mission files had called it. A frozen desert moon orbiting a decaying gas giant. A stopover. Nothing more. No one had expected an ambush. No one had expected to die here. His comm unit clicked. No signal. His ship, a low-orbit skimmer, was nothing now but a smoking crater several clicks east. Nothing responded when he hailed. The rest of his crew? Gone. Jacques pressed a hand against his chest and coughed. He had maybe hours before the cold hollowed him out for good, but then he saw it, a faint pulse of orange light in the distance, low to the ground, barely visible through the blowing snow. It blinked once, then again, like a heartbeat. Too rhythmic to be fire from a wreck. Too soft to be mechanical. Warmth, maybe. Shelter, or a hallucination. He staggered toward it anyway. Each step was a battle. The wind howled, dragging needles across his exposed skin. His boots sank ankle-deep in frozen dust, but he didn't stop. Couldn't. Something in that pulse tugged at his spine. It felt not like rescue, but invitation. He reached the source minutes or hours later. Time had begun to unravel. It was a cave entrance, black rock outlined by soft, flickering heat. The snow didn't fall near it. The ground was dry, quiet. Something in the wall shimmered faintly, like veins of crystal pulsing with breath. He hesitated, then stepped inside. The warmth hit him first, gentle, almost floral, not like fire but like memory. And then he saw her, a girl, kneeling near a small fire that crackled with hues of violet and gold. She was slim, long-limbed, draped in a silvery robe that shimmered like moonlight on ice. Her skin was pale blue, faintly glowing with shifting patterns that moved with her breath. Her eyes were wide, silver, unblinking. She said nothing at first. Jax froze, body swaying. She simply stared at him, not alarmed, not welcoming. Just watching. Finally, she tilted her head and spoke softly. "You can rest near me," she said. "The heat does not last long." Her voice wasn't robotic, nor cold. It was calm, smooth, almost tired. She gestured to the space beside her. No fear, no rush. Jax single quotes S mind screamed for caution, but his body had made the decision already. He collapsed near the fire, shaking, breathing in short gasps. The heat soaked into his skin slowly, not enough to banish the cold inside him, but enough to stop his hands from going numb. The girl did not move. Her silver eyes remained locked on him. "Thank you," he said through chattering teeth. She blinked once. "Your breath is shallow. You were close to stillness." Yeah, the crash." She nodded but asked no more, as if the details weren't important. As if she already knew. Jax leaned toward the fire, holding out his palms, but his attention kept drifting back to her. She sat very close, closer than strangers normally would. Her expression didn't shift, but her posture was open, unafraid. Yet something gnawed at him. Something small. She didn't shiver. Not once. Her skin glowed as if her blood ran with starlight. Her hair floated gently, though there was no breeze inside the cave. And her eyes, deep, bottomless, watched him like they were reading more than just his face. "What's your name?" he asked, just to fill the silence. She looked at the fire. "Sylha," she said. "You don't need to speak, just rest." And still she sat close. Too close for someone who didn't flinch. Too calm for someone who should have been surprised by a man falling from the sky. Jax watched her as the fire cracked between them. The cave pulsed softly, like it was alive. And the more he stared, the more he felt it. This wasn't just shelter. This was a waiting room. And he had just walked through a door someone left open. On purpose. The fire had died down to glowing coals, casting long shadows along the crystalline cave walls. Jock stirred awake, his joints aching, his skin still raw from the cold. He had fallen asleep without meaning to, the warmth lulling him into a half-dream, where he was back on the ship, laughing with people who were now dust. When he opened his eyes fully, she was still there, unmoved. Sylha. She sat where she had before, knees folded neatly, hands resting on her lap, eyes half-lidded but still watching him, not blinking, not breathing. At least, not like a human would. The glow beneath her skin had changed. Earlier it had pulsed gently, rhythmically. Now it shimmered in strands, sharp, thin lines of light running up her arms and neck like circuits, alive and shifting. Like a code being rewritten as he watched. Jax pushed himself upright slowly. The ground beneath him felt softer than it had any right to be, like it was shaped to support his weight. Too perfect. "You haven't moved," he said, voice hoarse. "I was listening," she replied, without looking at him. He frowned. "To what?" She turned her head now, fully meeting his gaze. "Your body speaks, even in sleep." His stomach twisted. There was no aggression in her voice, no menace, but the words dug into him all the same, unsettling. Her tone was matter-of-fact, as if stating the color of his boots or the number of breaths he took per minute. "What did it say?" he asked. She tilted her head, and for the first time her eyes narrowed slightly. "Fear, but not of me." He looked away toward the dying fire. Smart guess. Not a guess. Something about the way she said it made the temperature in the room feel colder. Not physically, but deeper, like a drop in pressure before a storm. She stood then, slowly, her movement smooth, almost too smooth. Her bare feet made no sound against the crystalline floor. "Your warmth is returning," she said, "but it won't last." "Not without touch?" He looked at her sharply. "What kind of touch?" She stepped closer, just one pace, and the fire's dying glow lit the underside of her face. Her expression did not change, but her eyes, they seemed darker now. Not dimmer, just deeper. "May I lie beside you?" she asked. "Only for body heat." Jox hesitated. The silence stretched long between them, until the only sound left was the fire's breath and his own. He remembered the first lesson from training. No alien offers come without meaning, but her voice wasn't laced with seduction. There was no flirtation, no mimicry of human warmth, only calculation hidden under a shell of calm. And her eyes, those silver lakes, did not plead. They weighted against his better judgment. Jax nodded once. "Okay," he said, "if it helps." She moved with quiet steps, settled beside him, and lay down. Her body was close but not touching. Not yet. The warmth from her wasn't immediate, but a slow burn like light under ice. She turned her face toward him, inches away. Eyes open. "You shiver less now," she said. Jax didn't answer. The heat between them was real, but his mind had gone sharp again. Alert, watching. He had slept, yes. But now he was wide awake. She did not close her eyes. "Do your people always sleep like that?" he asked. "Like what?" "Watching, all night, unmoving." Her lips parted slightly, just enough to let the breath out. "We only sleep when we are alone." Jox blinked. "You're not alone now." "No," she whispered, "but I haven't decided if you're safe yet." The words landed like snow on fire, soft but searing. That goes both ways, he said. She smiled for the first time. Not with joy, not with kindness. It was a quiet expression, and it made her face look older. Too old, she whispered. Good. The fire dimmed further, and the walls shifted again, as if the cave were breathing along with them. Jocks closed his eyes, but only halfway. Her body radiated no chill, no heat either. It was something else entirely. A balance he didn't understand. He felt her breath slow beside him, steady, silent, but her eyes never closed, and when the last ember winked out, plunging the cave into darkness, he thought he saw just for a moment a third glow in the room. Not from the fire, not from her skin. From her eyes, a brief flicker of something watching from behind them. Not her. Not entirely. Something else. The darkness inside the cave felt alive. It wasn't like the absence of light in space or under the soil of ruined outposts. This dark moved. It pulsed softly against the walls, breathed through cracks in the stone, whispered faint sounds that didn't belong to wind or fire. Jocks lay awake beside Sylha, motionless, listening. He hadn't slept. Not really. Syl hadn't either. Hours had passed since she'd asked to lie beside him. And in that time, she hadn't shifted, hadn't blinked. Her breath remained low, rhythmic, but strange. It didn't fog in the cold. And when he watched her from the corner of his eye, it felt like she wasn't sleeping. She was listening. Not to him, but to something deeper in the cave. At some point, Jock sat up slowly. Her body didn't react. She remained still, silver. Eyes open, glowing faintly in the dark like distant moons. He stood, legs aching, and stepped away from her, careful not to make noise. The fire had died entirely. No embers remained. But the walls still pulsed with faint veins of bioluminescence, gold, violet, and green. Enough to guide his steps. He wandered deeper into the tunnel behind the hearth chamber. At first it was narrow, just enough for one body. But after 10 steps, the walls opened. He entered a round chamber with a vaulted ceiling. The air here was warmer, not naturally, but intentionally, like it had been maintained. The walls were covered in markings, thousands of etched lines that curved and spiraled, glowing faintly in deep gold. The language was alien, elegant, alive. His hand drifted near one of the spirals, and without touching, the wall responded. A ripple of light burst outward from the symbol, pulsing like a sonar wave through the chamber. Jock stepped back, startled, but no sound came. Instead, a new glow emerged from the center of the room. A stone rose up from the floor, circular, waist-high, glowing like embers beneath ash. Sylha single quotes, S voice echoed softly from behind him. You found the listening chamber. He turned, heart spiking. She stood at the threshold, not angry, not surprised, but barefooted and pale against the golden markings, like a ghost carved from memory. What is this? He asked. A record of breath, she replied. Each spiral is a heartbeat, every pulse that passed through this land, each one stored, remembered. And that? He nodded toward the rising stone. She stepped closer, her fingers brushing across a nearby wall. That is where memory speaks back. He frowned. A machine? Not a machine, she said, voice calm. An echo pool. It doesn't store what you say. It reflects what you are. She gestured to it. If you place your hand there, it will show you what lies beneath your words. Not for me, for you. Why would I want that? She looked at him closely now, and her expression softened, not in pity, but in something deeper, understanding, because you are still lying to yourself, and it's pulling you apart. Jocks hesitated. His jaw tightened. He didn't like being read, but something inside him was tired. So very tired of carrying things even he didn't want to name, he stepped forward and placed his hand on the stone. The world around him vanished. In its place came light. Not white, not warm, but kaleidoscopic, spinning through memory like flipping pages in a burning book. He saw himself, younger, alone in a corridor, staring at a screen that blinked with the words "Mission aborted." Then, himself at 16, holding the body of his sister after the breach. Her fingers curled in his shirt, her eyes open but seeing nothing. He tried to pull away, but the stone pulsed. Holding him. Next came the faces of people he barely remembered. Friends, lovers, dead, gone. Voices overlapping in a storm. And then sylha. But not as she was. Now. She was standing on a cliff overlooking a valley full of fire. Her skin cracked with golden light, her mouth open in a silent scream, a fleet of ships falling from the sky. Behind her, others of her kind burned, fell, vanished. She turned. She looked at him. Not in the vision, but in the stone. Her eyes met his, and they were full of sorrow, not for herself, but for him. The vision shattered. Jax collapsed to the ground, gasping. His hand smoked slightly, as if the stone had burned into his skin. When he looked up, Sylha knelt beside him, her face unreadable. What? What did I see? He whispered. A splinter, she said gently. A piece of the truth you buried. He stared at his hand. The spiral was now faintly marked across his palm. What is happening to me? He asked. You are being remembered. She replied. The same way we remember all those who carry the bond. His blood turned cold. Bond? Sylha placed a hand on his wrist, delicate but firm. You think I asked to sleep beside you for warmth? He swallowed hard. She leaned closer, eyes glowing brighter. I was waiting to see if your fire still lived, if it would answer mine, if it would awaken. Jax pulled back. What are you? Her lips parted, but not to speak. To show. And as he watched, the patterns beneath her skin flickered, then changed. Not just random lines, but names, voices, memories, and he realized she wasn't one being. She was many. And they were watching through her eyes. The silence after the revelation wasn't silence at all. It hummed, pulsed. It filled the chamber like a second presence, thick and pressing on Jax's chest as he backed away from her. His boots scraped against the floor, a sound that seemed too loud in this sacred, ancient space. Sylha didn't follow. She simply stood there, bathed in gold light, the spiral pattern still glowing beneath her translucent skin. Her face remained calm, but her eyes, those eyes had deepened. Not darker, not colder, just wider, as if something behind them had woken up. He tried to breathe, to rationalize, to push away the storm that rose in his thoughts. You said you wanted warmth, he whispered. I do, she replied, but not mine, not really. I said, may I lie close? Because proximity reveals resonance. The bond can't lie. She stepped forward now, slow, not threatening. I've been waiting a long time, Jax, but I wasn't waiting for a name or a face. I was waiting for the one whose fire answered back. You're using me, he said. She stopped walking. Her head tilted, and for the first time, she looked hurt. No. I'm choosing you. There is a difference. Then what are they? He pointed to the shifting patterns under her skin, still flickering faintly, dozens, maybe hundreds of names. And shapes. Some moved like whispers, others like screams. Her gaze did not break. They are memory, every failed bond. Every soul that could not hold the fire, they live on through me. I am the echo of their hope. Jax backed into the edge of the spiral chamber, his shoulder hitting one of the crystal walls. This is insane. I'm not some vessel. I'm not some soul archive for your dying race. Then why hasn't your fire burned out? she asked softly. He froze. You should have died on the ice, she continued. You should have slipped into stillness like the others who crashed here before you, but the fire reached you. It protected you. It led you to me. He shook his head, but part of him knew she was right. He had walked through an impossible storm, half dead, and yet here he was. The spiral mark on his palm still glowed faintly, its warmth pulsing with his own heartbeat. I didn't choose any of this, he said. Neither did I, she whispered. For a moment, there was nothing but the shimmer of the walls and the quiet flicker of history moving beneath her skin. Jacques turned his face toward the tunnel, back toward the surface. He needed air. He needed cold. But when he stepped outside the chamber and entered the sleeping room again, he stopped dead. The fire in the hearth was gone. In its place stood something else. A figure. Tall, gaunt, wrapped in what looked like smoke and static. Its face was shrouded, its body semi-transparent, flickering in and out of focus like a corrupted signal. But its eyes, those eyes burned red, not heat, not fire. Anger. Jax instinctively reached for his sidearm. Nothing. It had been lost in the wreck. He stepped back. What the hell is that? He whispered. Sylha had followed him into the room, her expression unreadable. A guardian, she said, or a warden, depending on what you believe. The figure turned toward her now. It did not move like a living thing. It flowed. You brought him here? The voice was not sound, it was pressure in Jax's skull, a vibration that rattled his teeth. I did, she said calmly. He is untested. He survived the spiral. Barely, he answered. The figure hissed not air, but like static tearing. Jax clenched his fists. What is this thing? It's the keeper of the boundary, Sylha said. The last remaining one of those who left the bond long ago. Its kind chose silence over memory, survival over fire. They guard the threshold, but they've forgotten what waits beyond it. The figure spoke again, this time directly to Jax. You don't belong here. You are flesh, not flame. Maybe, Jax replied. But the flame didn't seem to mind. The guardian stepped forward, smoke curling from its limbs. If you go further, you cross the line. There is no return from the bond. That's not your choice, Sylha snapped. But Jax raised his hand. I want to hear it. What happens if I don't cross? The figure's red eyes flared. You forget, it said. You wake on the ice, your ship intact, your mission delayed, but your soul hollow. You will never remember this place. Never remember her. You will wonder why warmth makes you ache, why silence frightens you. You will feel fire in your dreams and not know why. Jax swallowed. His heart was thudding now, not in fear, not even in confusion, in clarity. He looked at Sylha. She stepped closer. You were never meant to burn alone, she said. But this path only takes those who choose it. Then show me, he said. Show me the bond. Her eyes glowed gold and silver at once. And the guardian vanished, as if erased. The fire in the hearth burst back into life blue and violet and white. She stepped forward, reached out, and touched the spiral on his palm. The light inside him exploded. His vision tunneled. Fire filled his chest, but it didn't consume, it revealed. 1,000 memories flooded into him, and at the center of them all, her, alone, waiting, always watching, always asking, will you stay? And he heard his own voice echo through the fire. Yes. The spiral on his palm burned white hot. The bond had begun. The fire in the hearth roared like a heartbeat in the center of the chamber, yet no smoke rose from its white-blue flames. It was alive, sentient even, pulsing not from fuel but from something far deeper, conscious will. The moment Sylha's hand met Jax's spiral-marked palm, the fire had ignited on its own. As though summoned by the echo of a long-forgotten promise, Jax stood still, shoulders trembling, chest burning, not from pain, but from something he could not explain. It wasn't heat that spread through his veins. It was recognition. A remembering of something his body had never lived, but somehow already knew. Images flared in his mind of towering stone cities carved from crystal, skies split by twin moons, and people with glowing skin standing hand in hand with humans in a circle of fire. Then came the sound. Not a voice. A song. It hummed inside his skull, in syllables that had no meaning and yet told him everything. It was the song of the Varisi bond, ancient and sacred, sung only once in the presence of flame and truth. Sylha's eyes were closed. Her breathing had deepened. She stood beside him, one hand still holding his, the other resting over her own heart. The patterns under her skin flared brightly. The names and memories, those souls that lived within her, singing with her now in silence. For the first time, she seemed whole. Jax spoke without knowing why. What now? Her voice, when it came, was distant, like it traveled across time to reach him. Now the flame must test the bond. Memory alone is not enough. It must know your boundary and see if it holds. What kind of test? When you cannot pass by strength or knowledge. It doesn't ask what you've done. It asks what you've hidden. The moment she said that, the walls of the chamber began to move, not crumble, shift, like the cave itself was peeling back, its outer skin to reveal something older beneath. The stone turned black. The glowing markings vanished. The fire stretched into long tendrils of light that twisted up the walls and across the ceiling. Jax's breath caught in his throat. The air had become thick, saturated with pressure, like standing in the eye of a storm about to collapse inward. Where are we? He whispered. Within the boundary of truth, Sylha replied. No lies crossed this space. The flames around them began to hum. The same song, now louder. But Jax realized something. The harmony had changed, distorted. One note clashed, off pitch. Sharp. The fire was showing discomfort. What's wrong? He asked, backing a step away from the center of the room. Syl has single quotes as face grew solemn. It has sensed something in you. Buried. Suddenly the flame surged up and engulfed him. He screamed, but no pain followed. Only light. Only memory. He stood now in a replica of his old home. Terra Sector 4. He hadn't seen it in over a decade. Hadn't thought of it since he left for the outer systems. But here it was, perfect. Untouched. And standing in the center of the room was her, his sister. Lyn. The one he'd failed. She turned to him, alive, whole, smiling gently. You never came back, she said. His knees buckled. This isn't real. He choked. No. Sylha's voice echoed from somewhere beyond. But your guilt is. Lyn stepped forward, and her smile twisted not in cruelty, but in truth. Her voice changed into the voice of his old commander. Then into the voice of his first love. Then into his own voice saying, you always run, every time, and call it duty. Jax dropped to the floor, clutching his chest. The spiral burned brighter, reacting to the emotional truth trying to rise. From within, stop it, he gasped. This is not what I chose. You chose to carry fire, Sylha said, appearing now as a figure of flame. Her form hovered above him, shifting between shapes, memories, faces of people he'd buried deep inside. But fire cannot hide what it touches. He shouted, and the chamber split open. Light spilled through the cracks. The images vanished. The vision shattered. Jax collapsed on his knees, soaked in sweat, heart pounding against his ribs like a war drum. The chamber returned to stillness. The fire receded. The spiral on his palm cooled to a dull glow. Sylha stood again as herself, watching him. Not with judgment, but with understanding. The bond is not forged in the absence of fear, she said. It is made through it. Jocks didn't speak. Couldn't. His body shook. His soul felt raw. Like the fire had stripped away his armor and left the wound open, uncovered. She stepped closer, knelt beside him. You faced what you ran from, she whispered. And the fire accepted you still. He looked at her, eyes rimmed with tears he hadn't even felt fall. What happens now? Sylha placed a hand on his heart. Now you carry the memory not as punishment but as power. He felt her. Warmth again. Real this time, gentle. Human, but then the ground trembled, and far above, from the world outside the cave, a sound echoed through the stone, a deep, droning thrum. Not thunder, not storm, arrival, syl, ha single quotes s expression changed instantly. Not fear, not surprise, but readiness. She stood and faced the flame. They've come, she said. Who? Jocks rose, wiping sweat from his face. Those who once rejected the bond. The silenced ones. They felt your awakening. And they're coming to unmake it. The fire flared. The spiral on Jocks' palm pulsed like a beacon, and outside the cave, the wind began to die not in calm, but in warning. The silence that followed the tremor was not peace. It was pressure. Jocks could feel it in his teeth, in the spiral on his palm, in the low frequency humming through the stone under his feet. Sylh, I stood near the fire, her head tilted slightly, as if listening to a language only the bonded could hear. The flames reflected in her silver eyes, and for a moment Jocks thought they looked almost afraid. Then she spoke, low and deliberate. They're not just coming, she said. They're already here. Outside the cave, the sky over Solaravai had turned dark red, not from clouds or storm, but from shadows, long, tall figures, moving like smoke and lightning, descending slowly through the atmosphere like forgotten gods, each one wrapped in cloaks that looked like time unraveling. Their limbs were impossibly long, their forms flickering as if resisting definition. Number. Ships. No engines. Just falling, returning. Jocks moved toward the entrance of the cave instinctively, then stopped when the warmth behind him surged. The fire crackled, not in fear, but in warning. The spiral on his hand burned again. They're the ones who left the bond, aren't they? He said. Sylha nodded. They were once like us. Once carriers of the flame, but they chose silence. And that silence hollowed them. Why now? Because the fire woke in you, she said. And fire is memory. And memory is truth. And they fear it, he turned to her. Then let's go. We stand together, like you said. But she did not move. Instead, she walked to the back wall of the cave and pressed both hands against it. The stone shimmered and receded, revealing something hidden behind it, an ancient chamber, black and curved like a womb, pulsing with amber light. Floating above the ground was a single object, a sphere of crystal cracked in several places, but still glowing from within, the ember core. Jocks felt its pull immediately. It was like looking at a version of the sun that remembered every soul that had ever warmed itself by its light. What is that? He asked. Our last beacon. Sylha replied. It stores the first flame, the original fire that gave the Varisi their bond with your kind. It has waited for a new carrier. Jocks backed a step. You want me to take it? No, she said, turning to him. I want you to listen to it. He approached slowly. The moment he came within arm's reach, the core pulsed and began to hum no, speak. Not in words, not in sound, but in memory. Jocks saw flashes again, humans and Varisi standing side by side in a spiral temple, hands joined over flame. Others who tried and failed. The wars that followed, the silence. The broken promises, the vow to never bond again, until now. Until? Him. The hum shifted, becoming a rhythm. It matched his heartbeat. The spiral on his palm began to glow brighter and brighter, until the lines of light traced up his arm and across his collarbone like living ink. The fire in the other chamber surged in response, casting the cave in pure golden light. Behind him, Sylha's voice trembled with emotion. "The core accepts you," she said. "It remembers you." Jax turned. "What happens if I carry it?" "Then you become fireborne in full," she said. "You won't just carry memory. You will be memory." His voice cracked. "And what if I can't bear it?" "Then it dies," she said. "And with it, every name, every bond, every hope that ever lived in our kind." He reached for it. His fingers brushed the surface, and the world split. He was no longer in the cave. He was standing in a great city made of crystal and flame, the sky torn with red lightning, the ground trembling. Varisi ran through the streets, children, elders fleeing shadows with red eyes and cold hands. And standing at the center of it all was Sylha. But she was different, younger, brighter. She turned to him and whispered, "We needed you then. We need you now." The vision collapsed. He staggered back. His hands now glowed from wrist to fingertip. The spiral mark pulsed once, then sank beneath the skin, absorbed. Something ancient now lived in his blood. "Jax," Sylha called. He turned and saw her standing at the mouth of the cave. The sky was splitting open. The first of the silent ones had landed. They stood at the base of the ridge, motionless. The wind died entirely. One stepped forward. Its voice was like a blade dragged across glass. "The fire does not belong to him." Jax stepped beside Sylha, his body glowing with soft golden light. "It chose me." "You are flesh," the figure hissed. "You are temporary." "So, were you?" Jax said, "until you abandoned what made you real." More silent ones appeared, a half circle around the cave. They did not raise weapons. They didn't need to. They were weaponized absence. Sylha reached for Jax's hand. "They'll try to sever you from the fire," she said. "They'll try to break the bond." He gripped her hand tightly. "Then let's remind them what it means." The fire inside him surged alive, awakened, burning not to destroy, but to illuminate. His skin flickered with memory. His bones carried the rhythm of the bond. The silent ones moved closer. The light around Jax intensified, and then the ground between them cracked open. And from it rose not fire, but voices, hundreds, thousands. The memories of the fallen, the unbonded, the forgotten. They had found a voice again. The silent ones staggered. For the first time, they recoiled. Sylha smiled faintly. "They remember," she whispered. The voices rose from the earth like vapor, no words, no shape, just raw memory poured into the cold air like breath held for too many lifetimes. The silent ones froze mid-step. The sound hit them like truth breaking glass. They did not cover their ears. They had no need. They didn't hear with ears anymore. They heard with what remained of their spirit, and that was precisely why they trembled. Jax stood in the mouth of the cave, the ember core behind him pulsing in sync with the spiral mark now buried in his chest. Golden lines etched across his skin glowed brighter with each breath he took. He wasn't just a man now. He was a vessel of flame, a living archive. The bond incarnate. And Sylha, she stood beside him, her eyes locked on the beings her kind once called brothers, the lead. Silent one stepped forward again. Its form flickered more violently now, as if the presence of Jax distorted its very shape. Where once its edges flowed like smooth shadow, now they cracked. Jagged static broke across its outline. It tried to speak, but the fire inside Jax answered. First, the spiral on his chest ignited, not burning, but casting a radiant wave of warmth and memory outward. Images surged through the air, visible like reflections on rippling water. A human child holding hands with a glowing Varisi elder. A firelit ritual beneath twin moons. Laughter, trust, love, the first bond. The silent ones flinched as if struck. The lead figure's red eyes dimmed. Its voice broke like glass under strain. You remembered. Jock stepped forward, his feet firm on the trembling ground. I didn't remember. I became what you tried to forget. The fire inside him surged again, this time with a golden hue that wrapped around Sylha too. Her glow intensified. The markings on her skin realigned, stabilizing. For the first time in centuries, she looked complete. The silent one backed away a step. The bond was severed. For a reason, it hissed. It consumes. It betrays. We watched it burn worlds. We watched it choose wrong. Sylha raised. Her voice not loud, but unshakable. You ran from truth. Not because it burned, but because it showed you. Your kind feared what they saw reflected. So you turned silence into sanctuary. But silence is not peace. It's absence. And it has eaten you alive. Another voice joined theirs. Not Jock's, not sylha, but the echo of a Varisi child. From within? The fire, from the ember core, you left us alone. It whispered. More voices followed, male, female, old, young. A choir of the forgotten, not angry, not accusing. Only true. The silent ones fell to their knees. Their forms began to shake, stutter, lose cohesion. Some turned to flee. Others dissolved into ash and memory. But the leader remained, eyes fixed on Jack's. If you carry the flame, it said, then the burden is yours. All the lives, all the losses, every sorrow that was ever bound to fire. Lives in you now? Jock's didn't flinch, I know. The silent one leaned forward. Then prove it. The world around them faded. Jax was no longer on Solara Vi. He stood in the middle of an endless desert of stars, light from dying suns, swirling around him. He could feel the memories inside the fire now. Not just images, emotions. The weight of thousands of souls pressed down on him. He saw lovers separated by war. Children waiting for parents who never came home. Warriors holding broken promises in their final moments. Fire had linked them all, had carried them through, but it had never erased their pain. It kept it, honored it. He dropped to his knees. His mind swam in grief and light. The spiral on his chest flickered. For a moment, he thought he might break, but then he felt her. Hand.sylha single quotes s. Not physically, not even psychly. Just presence. Her essence intertwined with his. A steady flame that did not ask for anything. It simply stayed. Jax took a breath and whispered, I choose to carry it. The spiral blazed white. The desert vanished. He was back on the ridge. The sky above him was clear. The silent ones were gone, not destroyed, but disbanded. Scattered. Like shadows at dawn. Sylha stood beside him, her hair glowing like moonfire, her skin now lit with stable gold lines. The ember core behind them dimmed, its purpose fulfilled. She looked at him not as a guardian, not as a watcher, but as bonded. You are the first in 1,000 years, she said softly. And the last we'll ever need, he exhaled. It felt like the first true breath of his life. What happens now? He asked. She turned her gaze to the horizon. In the distance, the sky split again, not with darkness, but with arrival. Ships, not human. Not Varisi, new, curious, drawn by the flame that had reignited. Now, she said, we rebuild. He nodded. They walked down the ridge together. Not Alien and human not host and guest, but two flames walking as one, and far above, across the stars the bond whispered again, this time not in sorrow but in song,